The humid air of Masaka hung thick and heavy, matching the weight in Lynette and Amara's chest. She stared at the faded blueprint in her hand, the detailed sketch of her Nile flow concept, the design that had been her entire future, stolen 5 years prior. The betrayal had been a swift, brutal strike delivered by two people, Samuel, her fiancé, and Patricia, her confidant. How could you? Lynette remembered screaming into the empty room after reading the cryptic final note. Samuel, the aspiring architect, had used her brilliant original portfolio piece to secure his spot at the prestigious Kampala firm, leaving her with crushing financial liabilities. "It's a dog-eat-dog world, my love," he had written, a phrase that still burned. She gathered the few sketches that remained, proof of her genius, not her folly. "Heartbreak is the ultimate forge," she muttered, a new, harder Lynette emerging from the ashes of the old. She secured her last shilling for a ticket to Kampala. The city lights promised anonymity and opportunity, two things Masaka could no longer offer. As the bus jolted to a start, Lynette didn't look back. Her path forward was paved with unforgiving ambition. "You thought you broke me," she whispered to the passing fields. "You only created a weapon." Lynette had traded the red dust of Masaka for the concrete and bustle of Kampala. Years of tireless work, designing small boutiques, creating bespoke furniture, and networking relentlessly had finally paid off. She was now known for her distinctive, culturally inspired luxury interiors. Today was the culmination of that struggle. Her sleek leather chair felt impossibly soft as she listened to Mr. Solly, the real estate magnate, detail his flagship project, a multi-million-shilling estate for a foreign diplomat. "The brief is complex, Lynette," he said, tapping a polished silver pen. "We need bold, Ugandan luxury. No one else has your eye." Lynette's heart hammered. This was it, the leverage she needed to launch her name into the stratosphere. "I assure you, Mr. Solly," she replied, her voice steady and professional, "my design will be unforgettable. It will speak of heritage and power." Later that evening, celebrating quietly with Alex, a kind, pragmatic civil engineer she had recently started dating, she felt a flicker of hope that had nothing to do with her career. He noticed her intensity. "You look like you're going to war, Lynette," Alex commented gently, stirring his soda. She offered a tight smile. "Just a battle, Alex. A very important one." She knew the fight wasn't just for the contract. It was for her identity. The first project meeting was held in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the dizzying city of Kampala. Lynette walked in, her portfolio clutched tightly, radiating confidence in her tailored suit. Then she saw him. Standing by the window, reviewing the site plans with Mr. Sassali, was a face she knew better than her own, older now, etched with professional success. Samuel. Her breath caught, her composure shattering for a sickening second. Architectural lead. The title swam before her eyes. Samuel turned, his expression initially formal, but then a flicker of stunned recognition, and something akin to guilt crossed his face. "Lynette," he managed, his voice a low, rough sound from the past. "This is unexpected." Mr. Sassali, oblivious to the history that had just exploded between them, introduced them with flourish. "Lynette Namara, our designer, and Samuel Cafaro, the lead architect, a dream team." Lynette forced her hand forward, her grip deliberately cool. "Architect Cafaro," she corrected, refusing to acknowledge the intimacy of his past use of her first name. "A pleasure to collaborate." The tension in the room was a palpable third person. Samuel leaned in slightly, his eyes pleading. "We need to talk," he murmured, barely audible above the city noise. Lynette's stare was ice. "We are talking, Samuel, about the framework for this house. Nothing more." Her revenge felt suddenly, deliciously close. Working alongside Samuel was a daily, agonizing exercise in professionalism.
His apologies, delivered in hushed tones between design reviews, were relentless and expertly phrased. "I was young and terrified of poverty, Lynette," he tried one morning, leaning against her drafting table. "It was selfish, I know, but I never stopped regretting how I hurt you." Lynette snapped her pencil, the small sound echoing in the studio. "Regret, Samuel, is a luxury you afford now that you have a name. You left me with nothing but the dust of Masaka and a mountain of bills." The raw anger in her voice stopped him. The next shock came from the project's administration file. His fiancée was listed as a minor consultant. The name, Patricia Kirabeau. The betrayal was a syndicate, not a solo act. Later, Alex called, his usual cheerful demeanor edged with worry. "You seem distracted, Lynette. That architect, is he causing trouble?" Lynette hedged, unable to admit the full scale of the internal war she was fighting. "He's difficult, Alex. Old school." She knew she couldn't confess the dark secret. She was actively scrutinizing every detail of Samuel's past architectural projects, looking for the fatal, ethical flaw she knew must exist, the perfect weapon for her ambition and revenge.
The project required specialized mahogany from a Masaka artisan collective, a perfect excuse for Lynette to return. The drive was a slow, painful trip down memory lane. She tracked down her Aunt Rhoda, the woman who had sheltered her during the worst of the financial collapse. Aunt Rhoda was sweeping her veranda when Lynette arrived, her eyes widening in surprise. "Lynette, my child, you look successful." The word was heavy with unsaid history. Lynette sat with her, sharing a cup of bitter, strong coffee, but avoiding any mention of Samuel or the Kampala project. "How did you manage to rise so high, my dear?" Aunt Rhoda finally asked, her gaze steady. Lynette confessed her current struggle, the impossible pressure of working with her betrayer. "I feel this need to make him pay for everything," Lynette admitted, the words tasting like metal. Aunt Rhoda sighed, resting a wrinkled hand on Lynette's arm. "Revenge is a heavy tool, my girl. Be careful it doesn't leave you as scarred as the original wound. Your power isn't in destroying him. It's in what you've built since he left." The simplicity of the wisdom was chilling. As she drove back to Kampala, the words echoed, a counterpoint to the vengeful plans simmering in her mind. Back in Kampala, Lynette's focus was split between designing and digging. She found it, an ethical violation from Samuel's first major project, a shortcut he'd taken that had been quietly buried but still had legal implications. It was the perfect lever. That evening, Alex found her staring blankly at her detailed revenge plan, a schematic of betrayal overlaid on a floor plan. "You know, I don't know much about your past, Lynette," Alex said quietly, sitting beside her. "I know only that you're extraordinary and that something is eating away at you." The trust in his eyes was almost unbearable. Lynette felt the weight of her secret, the financial ruin, the humiliation, the sheer spite of Samuel and Patricia. "They didn't just break my heart, Alex," she whispered, the floodgates opening slightly. "They tried to steal my future. They left me destitute, and now they are standing right in the path of the most important moment of my career." She hesitated, then decided she couldn't tell him about the leverage. "I need to ensure they never hurt anyone else," she finished, a cold resolve settling in her gaze. Alex simply nodded, understanding the gravity of her pain even without the full context. "Just promise me you won't lose yourself to anger," he pleaded. The final client review for the estate was set. Lynette presented her interior concept, a masterpiece of local craft and modern sleekness. Samuel presented his structural plans, looking confident. Just as the client, Mr. Salali, was about to sign off, Lynette interjected smoothly, her voice betraying none of the turmoil inside. Mr. Cofero's work is brilliant, but I have a few concerns regarding his previous professional practices, specifically the structural integrity issues on the Kazinga Towers project in 2021. The air froze. Samuel's face drained of color. Patricia, sitting nearby, gasped. The meeting dissolved into a tense, private confrontation in the hallway. "You wouldn't dare," Patricia hissed, venom in her eyes. "After everything you took, Patricia," Lynette retorted. "The concept, the money, the opportunity. I built this career from the rubble you left me in." Samuel stepped between them, his posture defeated. "It was an oversight, Lynette, an act of desperation. I know I deserve your revenge, but don't sink your integrity by dragging yourself down to our level." Lynette held the damning file, her finger poised over the text that would ruin him. She had the power. The choice now was a heavy, unexpected burden.
Lynette looked at the exposed, desperate faces of Samuel and Patricia. Ruin was hers to command, but Aunt Rhoda's words resonated. Your power isn't in destroying him. The thought of destroying the beautiful project they had collaborated on, the magnificent design that was her crowning achievement, felt suddenly repulsive. She lowered the file. "I won't use this," Lynette stated, her voice calm and firm. "I don't need to. The difference between us is that I built my success on talent, and you built yours on betrayal." She turned to Samuel. "I will not forgive you, for your sake, but for mine. I need to close that Masaka chapter." The shock on their faces was confirmation of her ultimate silent victory. Lynette walked back into the conference room and spoke to Mr. Solly, refocusing the conversation entirely on the future success of the project. She secured the contract, her reputation now cemented as powerful, brilliant, and, unexpectedly, merciful. Later, Alex found her on the rooftop, the Kampala skyline glittering below. "Did you win the battle?" he asked. She leaned into him, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "I won the war, Alex. I chose power over pain." Lynette Namara had finally secured her fate, realizing that forgiveness was the ultimate, most sophisticated act of revenge.